Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Welcome back to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and I am joined for the third week running by Nicole Russo. Thank you so much for coming back, and I'm so glad I haven't scared you off.
Same. I mean, my sassy little commentary. I hope everyone's came back for the last bit of it, for sure.
I think a little bit of sass does everybody a lot of good, I would say, in answer to that.
It does me, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, look, we have looked at so much over the last couple of episodes, Nicole. So listeners, if you haven't heard Nicole's first two episodes, please do go back and have a listen to those after, of course, listening to today. But today we are looking or chatting about Nicole's pivotal moments in her life that have led her to the path that she's on today. And often these are the most vulnerable moments that our guests share, but always comfortable in sharing, nothing that they don't want to share publicly. So, just feel comfortable there, Nicole, that we're not going to make you do anything you don't want to do and all that good stuff in true coaching style. So, over to you. What are the main things? And I often call them crucible moments. You go in as one thing, some sort of reaction and action happens in the middle, and then you come out changed the other side. So what's the one that sticks out most to you that you want to start with?
So the biggest one to be is kind of like how I kind of had left corporate fashion in a blaze of glory.
Explain blaze of glory.
I mean, I got fired. I mean, the honest answer is I got fired. So I got fired. I did not make my management happy because I did that thing where I started the business before I left, blah, blah. But anyway, it was, it's funny because in hindsight, when it happened, I handled it well and then didn't handle it well. I went off an emotional cliff. I thought I ruined my life. I'd been working at this amazing job. I had all this supposed security. All of that's a lie anyway. But my identity was wrapped up in it. I had this incredible role that people like, and I realized how much my identity was wrapped up in it because when I no longer worked at the company, it wasn't about how I left. It was because that I left, they no longer wanted the relationship. A lot of people didn't want the relationship anymore because they no longer had the benefits that they wanted through the relationship, which was a emotional disaster for me because I think that I didn't really anticipate any of that. And I didn't anticipate, the fallout for me because I didn't know, like I talked about on the first episode, what emotional stress would come from taking the risk. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because these horrible things always are.
Yep.
And one of the reasons it was the best thing that happened to me is there was no way I was going to go and get a job again. I was like, there was no way, as all these little scallywags I worked with are peering into my life through social media, waiting for me to go get another job, waiting for me to admit defeat, that it was I going to do that. I ate that poo sandwich and I shrugged on until I got to the other side. And it was a messy year for me. It was not the best in that sense. However, we are here now. So that was huge. I mean, it was huge for a lot of the reasons I mentioned. I mean, people lose jobs. The reason you lose a job, there's a lot of reasons. Doesn't matter. What matters is what happens next. And That was so transformative because it took so much like chutzpah and courage to sort of
Mm,
like trug on and try. And there were some people in the beginning of that era who really stuck with me, and I will forever remember them. And they didn't, not just like my mom and like who was like sending me like
mm,
cards in the mail, like cheerleading me. Like I'm talking about like people in the industry, people who were, helped open doors for me. They helped me continue on. They really saw like who I was and what I was about, and they didn't, criticize or judge the situation. I don't even know if they even knew. I don't think they cared was the point.
mm,
And I'll always remember those people, especially some, there's some designers or some people who are really successful that should not be answering my text messages, but they do. So that was huge for me. It was the catalyst for where my business is now. And, for a while, it really still like took me a while to like build up like, I guess to heal from
mm,
the trauma of that in a way. I mean, it wasn't just like a couple of months. It really took a while. But I mean, I would never, the thing and reason is like I was so scared to leave corporate. I don't know that I would have ever, I don't know if ever is the word, but I definitely wouldn't have then taken the leap. But I believe subconsciously I wanted to take the leap. That's why I took the risk.
mm.
Because I would never have played with fire. And because the reason I knew I was playing with fire is that will take us to our next story. So, about 2 years prior, I was on a vacation with a group of friends. It was one of my childhood friends, and follow the plot because it's a good story. Just get to the end. So, I was on vacation with a childhood friend, her partner at the time, and a few other acquaintancy friends that I knew through her. It was supposed to be this adventurous European vacation for multiple weeks that I had like saved all my PTO for. And it was the first time I'd ever really done any huge travel like this. I was super excited. And I was sort of working off the heels and the coattails of everyone who planned it and joining in. And about a week into the trip, I realized it was a complete and utter disaster for me, and that there was no way that I was going to be able to handle this. I won't get into why. Everyone on the trip was lovely. There's nothing bad about them, but like it was not working. And I had two choices. I was either going to get on a plane the next day and go into Morocco with this group, or I was going to go back to Spain from the Tenerife Islands, and I was going to journey on my own in Europe for 2 weeks, having never traveled by myself or internationally, except for a high school vacation, and see what happens. Because all I knew was I had a flight back from Paris in 2 weeks. So I guess everyone can guess what I did. I skipped out on the trip and I started journeying around Europe on my own, which was life changing, transformative. But fast forward to the real point of the story. Last night in Paris, I am in some beautiful bar in some neighborhood that was filled with Americans because it was on some guidebook, and I was annoyed because I didn't want to be with a bunch of Americans. And yet this lovely woman next to me goes, "You're from New York? I'm from New York." And she starts talking to me. And we became like fast friends in that moment. She takes my number. We get back to New York. We end up having drinks. She becomes a really good friend. Great story. Not over. About 6 months later, she knew all about my work. She knew that I was like into Let's Get You. She knew I was like styling men at the point. She blah, blah, blah. She knew what I was doing. Well, I still had this corporate job, by the way.
Mhm.
Next thing I know, I get an email from someone from Fast Company, and they're interested in my story about my business because they think it's a fascinating story and it's fascinating what I'm doing. So they do a write up, which leads to me contributing to a bunch of our articles, which leads to me contributing to a bunch of videos at Fast Company. And this is like 2017, 2018. Like, this is a huge period for Fast Company's time. And the girl who I met in the bar, who became my friend, where I was never supposed to be in because I was supposed to be somewhere else with other people, was the woman who made that email from Fast Company happen. And she did that on her own because she just knew me and what I was doing and thought it was cool. So that was a transformative part of life. So I made a decision to take a risk, to do something that scared me, to leave a situation that what didn't work for me. And it is the reason that I made a really good friend who believed in me. who was also a very successful, very powerful, very cool woman that I got to sit at the table with. And then I did the videos, I took the risk, and then I got fired. Because that's how why they found out, and they were like, "This is yeah." They got all mad and they got fired, and here we are now. I have my own business, but I would have never. Like this is what I mean. I think that the world sets you up for the position you're supposed to be in. I didn't want to work there anymore. I loved the actual job. I loved my work so much. I loved my clients. I even feel intrinsically the company was fine. My team and the environment I was working in was not good. The management was not good. And I didn't want to stay. And like I set myself up for, I created this very situation that would make sure I didn't. And then I like kept the company, and like those are like the two biggest stories. I mean, I definitely have like one or two other ones, but those are definitely the two huge ones.
Well, let's have a look at those two first, and then we can see what time we've got left. I mean, the oh gosh, there's so much in there. The courage and bravery again to go off and do something on your own after realizing that the situation you were in was not going to work for you. I've got what is a funny story now, but it was a dreadful story at the time about an experience in Morocco that I might share another time, but not today. It's still a bit new. But so I get that you didn't want to go to Morocco, but joking aside, it's just so lovely to hear that passion as you're telling the story about finding that again, that self-leadership, Nicole, to get yourself out of the situation, say that's not going to work for me. I'm going to go in this direction and do this. And I am how do I say this? I'm not massively spiritual, but I'd say I'm more sort of spiritual and a bit more woo-woo than I ever thought I would be, if that kind of gives you an idea. So there's definitely something in there for me about being right place, right time, and people coming into your lives, into our lives for a reason and at the right time and all of that, stars aligning and what have you. And I know that to some people will sound a little bit far-fetched and, oh no, we make our own plans and we make our own luck and all of that. Well, yes, to an extent we do, but there's definitely something else that goes on as well. And our paths cross with the people that either we're there to help them with something, or they're there to help us, or sometimes it's mutually helpful to be in each other's lives. And I've certainly over the years learned, situations where I've seen opportunities that have come because somebody's come into my life, or perhaps I've been able to give somebody an opportunity because I came into their life, whether it's a little bit of help or support or whatever. So it's fascinating to hear you talking about that serendipitous moment where you met her when you weren't meant to be there, but obviously you were.
Yeah. I mean, who knew? Who knew? And I think also, I had a genuine, I thought she was cool and she was really sweet and lovely person, but like I had a genuine curiosity in getting to know her as a person. And
Mhm.
part of my curiosity in getting to know her was that she obviously had accomplished a lot in herself in her life, but she was a journalist, and she was on a path that was very different than mine. And so I think that like we also need to we put ourselves in these positions because when we do things that we wouldn't normally do. Like I've now like I'm definitely way more of a risk taker. Some people are just
Mm.
can only put themselves in certain positions, but some people won't even go to a party by yourself. And I'm not talking about if you have a diagnosed anxiety disorder or some
Yeah.
legit, like really huge mental health
Mm.
a restriction or something that holds you back. I'm talking about it just makes you uncomfortable. I
Mm.
mean, like people. are so unwilling to put themselves in uncomfortable positions. And they're not gonna die. Like, if you go to the party or the networking event and it's awkward or weird, like, it's not gonna be on your gravestone. Just leave. Like,
Mm,
but you also, you never know if by going to the party, you could never meet anyone, but you could be leaving the party and you could find like an amazing wine bar that you invite your girlfriend to next Friday. And that's like the value of it.
mm,
Or
mm,
maybe like, you don't know like, what will come from being uncomfortable. And we are so unwilling to be uncomfortable. And that's
mm.
something that I think is why no one has doesn't have these stories. People that don't have stories just they don't do things. They don't make themselves uncomfortable. And you don't have to be putting yourself physically or emotionally or like you don't have to put yourself at risk in a way that takes out of your security, but you just have to be emotionally a little like, so who cares if you go on a bad date? Just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, who cares if you go to a bad networking event or like you send an email and the guy doesn't write back, or, you just make yourself uncomfortable. Because the beautiful thing about making yourself uncomfortable, it's the same thing as if you work out or I don't know. I'm trying to think of something else that is like unpleasant, but anything that you do that's unpleasant eventually becomes fine. It's why adrenaline junkies just start like, doing crazier and
Pushing
crazier
the
stuff.
boundaries even further each time, yeah.
It's a muscle. Like the more you do it, the more resistant you become, and the less you do it, the more resistant you become. So like you have to still whatever uncomfortable means for you as to lead your life in the direction you want it. It doesn't mean it could be like for example, I was really great at sales. I was really great at talking to strangers. I had no shame. Like I didn't care. And the more you do that, like the more less shame you have and the less care. But that made me great at first dates because I knew how to show up and talk to strangers. And I also knew that like I knew how to just continue to put myself out there and take risk and try and
Mm,
the repetitive nature of this. And like so when you do one thing really, if you do one thing that makes you uncomfortable, it will carry over to other parts of your life and it will
mm.
enable you to do more things. So just build the muscle in the way that you can. If for you the risk is like, I don't know, like sending emails. I'm trying to think of something that like would be, but like whatever is the first step in being uncomfortable. Like I went and did an international trip by myself. And but maybe you just like if you're uncomfortable is like you don't even go out to dinner by yourself.
Mm. Yeah.
Go go to a wine bar for 1 hour by yourself and grab a glass of wine. See
Mm,
how it happens. Just 1
mm,
hour. Set the timer, 1 glass, whatever. Like do it in a small dose. You will survive, and you might even be delighted in finding out that you actually might like it. Because
yeah.
I thought there's a lot of things that I didn't think I would like or that made me uncomfortable, and they have literally changed my life.
Yeah, I love this, Nicole. All the feels, as they say, because what you're saying is definitely resonating with me. It is about getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and again, in that leadership sort of space that I operate in, with my clients, um, the more that you push against your comfort zone and you start those, and I call them ridiculously small steps that you take outside to grow that comfort zone. So each time you try something new, it grows a bit bigger as you get more used to it. Getting through that sort of learning zone, sorry, that fear zone into the learning zone, and the growth zone. That's where the magic happens because you know we are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And as an accomplished coach, even I have my moments of, gosh, I can't do that. What are you talking about? I had it when I set this podcast up. Who on earth thought 2 years ago I'd have a podcast? I was holding myself back left, right, and center. There were all the excuses, all the answers as to why I couldn't do it. Not, well, actually, this is how it's going to happen and this is how I'll make it happen. And you know what? I got some amazing coaching support that got me through that and to where we are today, probably about 2 years later, chatting together on what will be episode 79, I think, by the time this goes out. So, it's incredible what we are capable of when we just give ourselves the chance to, coin your phrase from earlier, shine that light a bit brighter.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think that like anyone who looks at anyone that they admire, an athlete, a business person, uh, a friend, you'll notice if you look at what makes them successful in your eyes is their willingness to continue to do whatever is their work. Like exceptionalism is built on pushing yourself forward and through. And even the greatest of athletes still have a rest day. So we're not saying that you have to, yeah, it's not not to the point of, where you take yourself out, but it like, I really believe that most people are mediocre. And I say that in as kindly as possible. I really mean like most people are mediocre because they don't have the willingness to try. Like they just don't. They just aren't, and it doesn't mean like anything that you want to be above average in life requires effort and showing up continuously. Sometimes the effort is just going to the class. It's not even like how hard you work in the class, it's just actually getting there. It's the consistency. Like it doesn't matter if you want to be an influencer. You know what makes influencers famous? Consistency. Like it doesn't even matter if they were like blowing up in TikTok because like, oh, it was when the algorithm, they showed up all the time and did whatever it was they were doing. It was the consistency. And like most people are not consistent, and that's why they're mediocre. They're inconsistent with everything. They're inconsistent with their character, or they're inconsistent with their work. They're inconsistent with like the way that they present themselves. They're inconsistent with their like vegetable intake. They're inconsistent. Like if you're in, and I'm myself guilty of this. Like I have to. We all are human, and we're all trying to grow in our own ways. And when we acknowledge our role in things, we all have privileges and we all have disadvantages. Every human being on the planet has one and the other. Sometimes more of one than the other. But we all still have the personal choice. And even if the personal choice is extremely painful and difficult, every day, even if it takes you a decade, every day is an opportunity to continue on the path towards who you want to be. And you have complete control over that. Well, assuming, if you're able to listen to this podcast, you have complete control over that. I know that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is within our own gift to ourselves. It is within our control. And something that I always say is there is always a choice. And people can choose to be inconsistent and, to use your words, stay mediocre, but they can choose to excel and make those choices that take them to the next level. We've all got those choices. Yes, some people have privileges over others. Of course, I'm not saying that doesn't exist in our world. Unfortunately, there's a lot of disparity and privilege in different countries and what have you. But when we're talking about the leadership sense, those choices that we make and the areas that we choose to excel in, we have that control to be able to do that for ourselves.
Certainly. I mean, but also, I mean, even going back to our conversation about humanity, like you can be a mediocre human in terms of your humanity. It doesn't even have to be in the tangible or physical world, you know?
Yeah.
We all have an opportunity to self-improve or be the, you know, in whatever way we want to. And I also, when I say the word, like, when I say like mediocrity, I don't mean that like we're all have to be striving for, you know, like type A
Yeah.
psychos, you
Of course.
know, but if you if there is something that you want to change or be greater in or
Mm.
see changes upon, like if you're that's where that self leadership and that self responsibility comes in.
Yeah.
No one should tell you or decide that your life is mediocre. You decide. You're the one who feels whether or not mediocrity is your current state. I can't say you're mediocre. I know a lot of badly dressed people that are perfectly happy with it. And I 100% support that because they are comfortable with it. And
Mm.
that's the goal. That is
Yeah.
the goal, right? So, like,
Absolutely, absolutely. And, let's face it, we are all superbly unique. That's what makes the world a great place to be and keeps my curiosity fired up, that's for sure, because we all make different choices. And what's, okay and comfortable for me is going to be very different to you, and what you're okay and comfortable with. What mediocre looks like to you is going to be different to my view and my lens of the world. So there's all these different things at play. We're never all going to be thinking the same thing, wanting the same thing. And that's what makes it great, because there's so much out there that people can choose to bring in and out of their lives to help support whatever it is they want to go for at that particular time.
totally. I like, even to when it comes to the fashion component, right? Like, my opinion only matters. Like, people sometimes be like, well, how's my drip? Like, how do I look? And I'm like, first of all, you're not my client. So it's my opinion only matters if you actually want me to change, if you want to change. Like, what I think about what people dress, it's none of my business if you like it. Now, if you want my opinion because you want to change something or you want an expert's point of view, I'm happy to share it. And, like, I'm
Mm.
happy to work with people. But, like, I should never say that someone else is like preferred way of dressing is not okay for them unless they're paying me or like,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
do
yeah, absolutely.
like I don't like I can keep my opinions to myself. And I also say, like, in addition to that, that oftentimes, like, what people are looking for is the confidence of a badly dressed person who doesn't know it.
That's making me smile.
I mean, I don't even have to explain that. Like,
No.
you just like know. Like, that's what people want, right? And so the confidence of a badly dressed person who doesn't know it. Um,
Love it. Love it. Well, look, what fascinating conversation yet again, Nicole. You've been with us for 3 episodes. We've heard your leadership story, your take on Game of Leadership, and some of those really important pivotal moments that have changed your life and brought you to exactly where you are with me in this moment today, recording this podcast. So I thank you deeply. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear and get to know more about you and how you choose to show up in your own leadership story. So thank you so much for sharing all of that and your whole self with us. It's been a real pleasure.
my pleasure too. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Take care. Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. This has been the 3rd episode and final episode for a little while anyway, with our guest, who shared their pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. Again, I talk about uniqueness a lot. Every guest story and their pivotal moments, the challenges they faced, the issues they've faced over the years to get to where they are now, and how they pulled themselves through all of that, makes them the leader they are today, and each one of those stories is unique and different. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with them and see what that meant for them. Now, once again, it's your turn to reflect on what you've heard today, see what resonates for you, and think about what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I look forward to welcoming you back next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.